ICE does not pepper spray children.
Now, in case you didn't catch that, she says ICE doesn't pepper spray children. And then she goes on to provide what she calls the facts on what actually happened. So, Jeffrey, have you seen a more aggressive information campaign coming from the White House in previous years?
I'm not sure that I have, but and I would be inclined to say at first, when I first heard about this, I thought, well, this is not good. This is somehow overriding the prerogatives of a free press. They can say whatever they want, and it's not up to the government to dictate what the news should be. I mean, that was my first instincts. But then I watched what they actually put out, and I thought, my goodness, what's being reported in the mainstream press is an outrageous distortion of the facts that the Department of Homeland Security and ICE have by virtue of the case particulars, and they were reporting and clarifying the actual truth behind these what seemed to me to be very much wild, biased distortions by the media. So it occurred to me as I was watching this, I thought, it kind of makes sense that they have to do this rather than seeing a public get inflamed with false information. It's better to put out the actual context, and all they're doing is sharing the actual facts of the case. They're not threatening anybody. They're not telling people to not report the other thing or whatever. I mean, they're not using coercion in any sense. They're just telling their side of the story, and I don't know. I found it very enormously valuable. I could see how this could be abused, but looking at what based on what I saw so far, it doesn't seem like an abuse at all. All the abuses seem to be on the other side, of the people that are reporting things that didn't actually happen or leaving out very important context that would help settle the public down and clarify the policies in question.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what else might be behind this latest move. So, as you know, the speed at which information travels, as well as its reach, has increased dramatically over the years. And that makes it easier for news outlets to continually push out news stories, which is what I think they're trying to get behind. So, do you see this administration's information campaign as a direct response to this rapid fire news?
I think it must be, and I'm very sympathetic with this in some ways. I mean, I think anybody who's been subjected to some kind of media campaign based on incomplete, false, or distorted information, you can understand why the Trump administration wants to just not go forward with a new interpretation. If you watch these videos, all they're doing is giving the context, the facts, certain features of the incident in question that have been left out of the media to create a wildly distorted impression. I can totally understand why they would do this. Now, as to whether or not previous administrations have done this, I think they probably, if they have attempted it, they've not done as well. I don't think you've ever had a relationship between a presidential executive administration and the press that has been, and the mainstream press, or what some people call the legacy corporate press, that has been so hostile. It's been unrelentingly divisive and hostile now, going on 10 years. Everybody knows this. So we can fully expect that these legacy media outlets would use every occasion to make the Trump administration look bad. And you look at it from the point of view of the public, all we really want are the facts of the case, right? Many people are just independent and looking for what's going on. And, in the case of this immigration thing, I'm a very good example of a person in this position. I would like to know what ICE is actually doing, whether there's any justification for it. Are they using excessive force? Are they really going into daycares and all this other kind of thing? When the media is reporting one story and the administration comes back and gives documented proof that there's a larger context, there's other things going on, that there is a justification for what they're doing. If they're using force, it's because force is first used against them. And so as a viewer, I would like to know this. And if other people are not reporting it, Epoch Times and NTD have been fantastic and reporting as many facts as they have available to them. But the truth is, the administration would typically, in these particular cases, have access to a greater range of facts and context than anybody else. So, in a sense, it's their obligation to present the full picture to the public, especially when you have legacy media, as I say, trying to inflame people for biased political reasons. It makes perfect sense that they would do something like this. And also, just to add finally, the Trump administration has proven itself to be an extremely effective communicator to the public. Not perfect, but much more open source and going directly to the people by using social media channels and so on. And I think that's going to increase public trust in what the Trump administration is doing.
Now, given your point you've just made about previous administrations not having to, respond to a hostile media, if you will, we have a current political climate right now, and it can be harmful. So how harmful do you think this misinformation or bias can be to a president's agenda?
Well, it's frustrating because what it does is it diminishes public trust. I mean, many of these venues are things that I have relied on throughout my career, and just implicitly trusted that if a reporter is reporting something, they must be verified. It must have been checked by the editors that they're anxious to present a valid and verified record as a way of chronicling American public life, in the public interest. I mean, that's how I always assumed that media works. But there's something about the Trump administration that even as early as, I would say, as I say, 10 years ago, even when he first started running, where the deal that the American media made with the public was sort of broken. Now suddenly you have, and I don't think this is a controversial statement, you have
Fake
an
news.
aggressively partisan press that's anxious to put the worst possible spin on absolutely everything this administration does. And it gets frustrating and it gets tiring. And from my own point of view, it makes me sad because I used to really love a lot of these venues and trust them, and I kind of cheer them on. I want them to be good, So when you see this kind of thing happening, it makes you sad for the media that we used to love and we used to trust, and that as Americans we felt a lot of pride in, and now you see this aggressive bias taking place, and sometimes, especially when it's a story that I know really well and I see what they're reporting, I just have to put down the paper and I'm shocked. Why are they saying this? Why are they doing this? And the only possible reason is just a wildly partisan mission that's going so far as to actually not report the full truth. And I see it again and again. It's been going on, as I say, for 10 years. So I think it's about time the Trump administration stood up to it. And again, they're not silencing anybody. They're not intervening in free speech. They're just looking to add their voice to the mixture of influences on the public mind. And that strikes me as not just legitimate, but in this case, wholly necessary.
Now, we're talking about free speech here. If you look back at the Biden administration, there was a lot of pushback when the Disinformation Governance Board was announced. And one of the biggest concerns was that it would infringe on free speech. So is the Trump administration's effort to expose so-called fake news and counter what it considers misinformation different? And should the White House be concerned about infringing on freedom of speech?
Yeah, I think your question is extremely insightful. And I will say this about everything I know about Disinformation Board or whatever it was. So under the Biden administration, you had a great deal of links and communication that were going on between the administration and third-party nonprofits that were in turn linked with university study centers that had other relationships with social media companies. It was a complex network of censorship that was going on. In fact, even to explain it requires a lot of words and even charts. It was quite something else. So it was in effect operating as a censorship mechanism. So we have actual documents due to court filings and discoveries and everything else, and FOIA requests that show White House officials uh, reaching out directly to social media companies and threatening them, and then also those same individuals working with third parties at universities and other NGOs that had links to social media companies. We have the testimony even of top executives at social media companies who have told under oath that they very much felt pressured by the White House to ban certain accounts, to throttle certain accounts, to ban certain words. In effect,
shut me down on X,
censorial
on Twitter, I should say.
how they undertook the management of their companies. There's another fact too that I believe it was in 2022 or 2023, the Biden administration put out a declaration on the future of the internet that excluded the words free speech. They wanted the internet controlled by stakeholders like corporations, media companies, universities, and other aspects of major players in civic society. That when I read that document, I thought, oh no, they really do aspire to make the internet work very much like, television did in the 1970s. I mean, it was very strange to me. So I think we have a great deal of documentation of what went on under the Biden administration. As far as I know, none of this is actually happening under the Trump administration. He put out an executive order on free speech. He's banned government from muscling social media companies. Many of the agencies and NGOs have been defunded by the Trump administration. So I think you're looking at a completely different approach to the management of the public mind. I think what you're seeing here is very simple. The Trump administration is setting up its own media communications department in every agency, and that is not an intervention in the First Amendment. That seems like that is the Trump administration exercising its First Amendment rights, just like everybody else. That's all.
Well, let's look at this from another perspective. So the next administration, for all we know, could oppose this administration's goals. And they could very well pick up the Trump model to counter what they consider to be misinformation. So what responsibility does the public have to conduct their own research to find the truth rather than relying on the government to make those decisions?
Oh, I'm 100% with you on this. We know this is going to happen. Everything that's happening under the Trump administration is serving as a kind of pedagogy for the next administration. We can expect all this to return if it's controlled by a different party or a different person. It's all going to be repeated. And yes, it does. I think it's probably in the end a good thing. As much as I sometimes look nostalgically back on the old days when there were 3 networks and everybody trusted the media, it's probably better to live in a world like we
ABC,
do now,
NBC, and CBS.
so many information sources. It's a cacophony out there. And I think anybody who's observing the media, the way it's developed and evolved over the last 5 or 10 years, is realizing that ultimately it comes down to the individual citizen, himself or herself, to make a judgment based on the facts as insofar as we can discern them, and that's probably a good thing. I mean, freedom can be messy, but in the end, I think it gives us the best chance for the truth to emerge on top.
Well, Jeffrey, I think that President Trump has been very vocal about his feelings about the media, so it shouldn't be any surprise to anyone that this media bias website was formed. And I think that from here on out, more people will start to look into this themselves to find out what the real truth is. Jeffrey Tucker, thank you so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.